Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Real Red Talk, your favourite football fan channel made in Manchester. We've got James from the Muppetiers alongside us tonight to hopefully get some clarity on a lot of the issues going on at Manchester United. I know you're a very busy man, James, so we always appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us. First and foremost, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well considering everything, and yeah, always a pleasure to come on, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. Well, we are hoping to pick, you were saying off camera then, hoping to pick your brain about a lot of stuff. So let's just fucking dive straight into it. I want to
Yeah.
start off with last night's game because it's kind of the kind of topical conversation at the moment. And we'll get into the VAR decisions definitely very, very shortly. But just on the performance as a whole in general, how do you feel when you've had time now to kind of reflect on the game?
I don't know, honestly, because there's good things. Um, I thought we were obviously decent in the first half before the red card, of course. I think obviously scoring a couple of goals, I mean, you can't complain too much. Copenhagen certainly came to play and left spaces. It wasn't like in the Premier League when we're playing against these loaded boxes and all that. So we were able to score on the run, and frankly, that's kind of where we still have our strengths. I was very encouraged. Unfortunately, that was the area of the field we got a man sent off in, but I was very encouraged by the selection of the front three because it's kind of it's the best front three. I just think it is. Like, forget the left-footed Anthony for a minute. It's far and away the best front three, and I've been begging somehow get Rashford and Garnacho on at the same time and see what happens. And you can see Rashford had more space and more time on the ball when he was getting it. Garnacho had space and time, and Højlund had actual space too because there was defenders being pulled to either side, and it worked. And I hope obviously we run it at the weekend. But the biggest disappointment, aside from the refereeing that we'll talk about, is I think it was just the same capitulation that we see over and over and over again with United from a lot of the same players, I mean, even down to 4 goals conceded is crazy. And I have questions refereeing wise on a couple, but the last two, there's just nothing you could say about it. They're just unacceptable goals to concede in given the circumstances. And there's just something about that. I mean, missing a forward shouldn't be why you cannot defend in the final minutes of a game and see it out.
Yeah, there was a defensive lapse, wasn't there, with Dallo? Like, just I watched it back, and he actually checks his shoulder as well, which makes it even worse. Like, he looks over his shoulder, knows the guy's there, and goes, "I don't need to pick him up."
Well, this is repetitive behavior, isn't it? They've seen it so many times this season. That's the annoying thing. It's not a one-off. Fucking seen it millions of times.
But yeah, it worries me that he signed a long-term deal, so it looks like he's not going anywhere either. So we're sort of stuck with him, which kind of worries me because he's just like, out of the two of Wan-Bissaka and Dallo, you think Wan-Bissaka would be the one you keep because he offers something that nobody else has. Dallo is okay in most areas, and that's it. Like, he's not fantastic in any area. So, but yeah, I wanted to touch on VAR anyway, James. Some of the decisions in last night's game were controversial at best, I'd say. Like, that's the best way, the nicest way I can put it. The Rashford red, the handballs, which, although I disagree completely with the handballs, at least they were consistent in it. Like, they gave one for us, they gave one for them, so at least there's that. On the point of VAR, and feel free to touch on the Rashford red as well. On the point of VAR, are you at the point now where we're just like, just get rid of it? It's not functional anymore. It doesn't work. It doesn't do anything, any of the stuff that we brought it in to do. It's not clearing anything up. It's just bringing more disrepute into the game. Or do you think it can be saved and used effectively?
I think the problem with VAR is the problem with officiating. I think VAR has been used, I think, to good effect in games where there is no outside influence. And what I mean by that is referees know, and they all know, what will happen if they make questionable calls in favor of Manchester United. And we're not the only club, but it certainly is a big one. They know what will happen. And so the problem with VAR is whenever it's slightly subjective, they have to spend minutes thinking, this could go against United. And if we call it the other way in favor of them, look at the outrage that's going to happen. Look at what happened with Onana against the Wolves. Was that one a penalty? Maybe. I could see it as a penalty. But look at how much talking there was about it. 10 times more than all of the calls that go against Manchester United. Look at the goal against City last year, the potential offside, with Rashford running kind of by the ball and all of that. Weeks of them discussing it. Whereas when you make a call against United, it's nothing. And so I think the biggest problem with VAR is the human element that gets introduced in that period of time it takes to review it and discuss it, wherein it's going to come into their mind, if it's 50-50, we're going to call this against United because otherwise we're going to be accused of bias. If there's even it's definitely not the application of clear and obvious. Let's put it that way. And I think that is the main issue, is they're not applying clear and obvious to the situation, and they're still making subjective calls. And I don't know the answer. I mean, I think VAR is good for certain reasons, but it doesn't seem to pick up on a lot of the things that it should, especially just with how clubs work. I mean, I'll never forget, Virgil van Dijk. They didn't have VAR in this. Virgil van Dijk's tackle on Mertens, I think, and Napoli in the final group game that they were in, that they needed a win for. One of the worst tackles I've seen. Flying in at full pace, studs up straight into the ankle, gets a yellow. 100% should have been a VAR red. There was no VAR at the time. And they go on to win the Champions League that year. And they would have been knocked out in the group stages. And it was a huge call and a huge moment. And you think, well, yeah, if we have VAR, it should be able to catch those things and make the right call, and it can change outcomes in a proper way, because it 100% should have been a red in that case. But then they don't. They just keep making it subjective, and they keep letting certain teams off the hook for these types of things, and then over penalizing. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think it comes down to, improving upon somehow, how do you get more independent discretion in that decision? I don't know. In U.S. sports, the answer is it goes to some unknown person in an unknown room in a different part of the country that is making the decision most of the time, rather than the referee on the field. And when you look at other sports like rugby, they explain everything so clearly. They talk it through. They discuss it. And it's like there's no room for bias, because they're so clear in how they're making the decisions. And people respect it. It works. And so it's just a matter of, it's just a matter of the human element of it that they cannot remove. And that's it. I don't know how to get around that, frankly.
I'd love to hear everybody else's thoughts. Got 81 people in the chat. Do leave a like on the video for us if you can, but get involved as well. Let us know your opinion on the decisions last night, whichever one you want to go for, because there's a handful of them. And we are going to dive into the takeover chat very, very shortly. But I have to agree with what you say there, James. For me, it's getting overly confusing now, to the point where it's like it feels like it's doing more damage than it is helping. And there's no clarity on these situations. They say one thing one week. Like today, we just retweeted an incident in the Liverpool game where I think it's Endo who goes in for a challenge, and he's literally stamped on. He's done the exact same thing as what Rashford's done and received the yellow card. And you sat there scratching your head thinking, well, why the fuck does this happen to United, especially this season? The art decision's gone against us this season.
Also,
it's just
they've decided as well what, like the offside in the Fulham game. Since when was offside became subjective decision? When did that happen? Yeah. I've never seen that happen in my entire life. I've never seen with VAR and stuff like that to go to a decision to VAR and then the referee go back to the referee to make a decision, and it's subjective whether Harry Maguire is in play or not.
Yeah,
I've never seen that before, and it's like they panicked in the VAR room. We don't know what to do here, so let's just fucking make something up on the go. And luckily, we ended up sort of getting through the game. But that could have cost us yet another game. That could have cost us yet another game. And it's getting to the point now where it's just unacceptable. It's unacceptable.
They're never going to ban it about it. They're never going to get fucking rid of it. They'll stick with it. They'll say still teething issues and a load of other bollocks. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Sam.
Yes. Takeover. Let's talk about the takeover. We were speaking on Twitter earlier today, James, and you sort of mentioned to me it's a good day for takeover news. Do you want to give us a bit of gossip?
Yeah.
Give us, well, not even gossip, but just give us a bit of the info.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was interesting because overnight you had Alan Nixon, who said that Jim Ratcliffe would be in charge by Monday. I'm not sure it'll be that quick, but he said that.
How reliable is he, by the way, James? Sorry, just
Yeah, that's a good question. Here's the thing, obviously, I think Alan Nixon has been doing this a long time. His specialty, he's very he reports a lot on lower league stuff. He has for a long time. And he's very reliable in that. I mean, he's not a crackpot, that's for sure. I mean, he's not a guy who just makes up complete nonsense. He's not that type of person. He has very real connections and very real news. Now, whenever it comes to something like the takeover, you still have to put it through a totally different lens because there's people who have very real connections, very real news that have no idea what's going on and can be fooled in all of this. Some of the things he said, I think, are correct. Some of the things he said, I think, it's a gray area with regards to it. There's stuff about Monday. I don't know that it'll be that quick. There's stuff about, how they see personnel changes. There's earlier stuff about Graham Potter that he's mentioned in the past. And we'll see on a lot of it. I'm not sure the 100% accuracy on these kind of things. But there's some truth in it. And then you had Kave at Sky, which I'm sure pained him greatly, to say that there would be that there is an announcement date that is set for the there's a date set for the announcement of Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos's 25% stake purchase in Manchester United. And from what I understand, that's probably true too, or at least there's an estimated date or a planned date or something like that. Early on in this week when I was doing our podcast with Phil, I mentioned that it was described to me that there were talks ongoing while we were recording that podcast that were essentially kind of your end game talks, your final details, your things like that. And yesterday, I was pretty much told it's essentially there. They're probably doing the basic legal things that have to be done and all that, the kind of boring stuff. But they plan to and they want to announce this deal next week. And that's been the case for a little while now, that they've been aiming for this international break to kind of get this done, over, set, announced, and put through. And it looks like right now, I think they will do it. I haven't heard any indication that they won't, that they plan to, that they're aiming for it. So I think it's a good day for that, and I think we're getting there.
So you're telling me these Qatari journalists on Twitter who are in the know are just spouting shit? Wow, what a surprise! What a surprise! Yeah. If this, in terms of the logistics of this deal, James, does that mean if this does go through, that it's nailed on, he will eventually take over, or is it a lot more complicated than that?
That's a really good question. And those are the types of details that are going to be really hard to know. Obviously one of the factors in this is that there's things I can get and things that I hear, and there's the things that they really cannot leak.
Yes.
Because of the nature of this situation being on the public stock exchange and things like that. Like there was an article the other day about with an interview with one of the largest Class A shareholders in Manchester United, saying he had no idea what was going on with the takeover. And some of the people took that to say, well, if the shareholder hasn't been told, how could anybody know, and how could it be close to being done? So that's exactly how this works. Nobody has to be informed until it's actually done. And then when people talk about informing the New York Stock Exchange, it's not like something that nobody knows. It's informing the shareholders via the proper channels. They will find out when it's fully done the same day everybody else will find out. The details of the deal itself, financially, all of that, I don't think they can leak, because those are things that material affect the share price and things like that. So when I say I'm hearing, that it's going that way and it's agreed and it's probably done and all of that, this is obviously from the standpoint of people around it feel like they've reached an agreement on it. You still have to ratify, you still have to sign, you still have to get the legal documents, and all of that's going to be reported instantly. when it comes to the actual your question on the long term, how I understand it is that's been the main subject of discussion for the last month, because it's been near a month since we've been hearing that, okay, they're going to win, they're going to get this, and now they're moving through these negotiations. Well, before that, it was about the 25% and a lot of how that would work once they're in place and negotiating sporting control and things. Beyond that has been the long-term plan, because those are things you're going to want in place in this deal. You don't want to buy 25% and say, no idea how we're going to get more in the future. We just have to hope the Glazers will accept another offer in the future and go through this whole process again. No idea what happens when we dump 245 million pounds into the club and what happens with that money and all of that. Those are the things that are going to be agreed upon at this time. So while I don't know what the agreement is, I know that that has been the main subject of discussion for weeks, if not a month now, and longer probably in the general sense, on the specifics of pathway to majority ownership, pathway to full takeover. When Sir Jim puts this 245 million pounds that he's planning in, what's going to happen to that? And that is one of the differences.
Sam, just before you get yours, there's a super chat there. Do you want to read it out?
Well, that's... Oh, yeah, sorry, James. James is sorting something out. The super chat from Dan...
Just had to,
yeah. Super chat from Dan. It was actually going to be one of my follow-up questions. Dan's asked, how much control will Sir Jim have in footballing decisions? And my question was going to be, once this is ratified early next week, is Sir Jim then straight on in the reins of the footballing decisions, or is that going to be another period of time before he gets sort of control of the footballing side?
I mean, that should be pretty much right away. That should, in general, happen right away. You would that's really a major part of the whole deal in itself. There's things like owners and directors tests that will have to occur because he's getting 25%. That's sort of the threshold. That will have to occur, I think, before he can actually put money in. Mm-hmm. But pretty much immediately he's going to have control. And the thing to realize about this is that, that's going to be part of the agreement with the Glazers. And part of the thing to understand is, like, this isn't like a hostage situation, okay? The Glazers want this deal. They're going to make a lot of money from this deal. They want this agreement. They need this agreement. They have nobody else to turn to in this situation to buy them out and to give them money and things like that. And so this is not like, people stabbing each other in the back. There's an agreement here that will be in place that will allow that to occur. And even if logistically or legally for 6 weeks, Sir Jim's not technically yet in as an owner from an owners and directors test, well, he's been meeting with Joel Glazer for the last month, to tell him what they want to do sporting wise, to talk about all of that. And those are things that are likely going to be starting to occur immediately. They cannot before he actually owns part of the club and notifies the New York Stock Exchange. They cannot make decisions based on that, an outside person like that. But once he's in, they can start doing things pretty much right away.
So would you expect to see like the likes of, I know of rumours of like John Murtagh and Richard Arnold possibly like leaving their roles in the football thing, and then people like Sir Dave Brailsford, Paul Mitchell's been rumoured, Jean-Claude, I want to say Van Damme, but I know it's not. Yeah, would you expect to see those guys sort of start to sort of come into those roles, and John Murtagh and that exit theirs?
Yeah, I would. I think during this season, through the course of the season, that is what we're going to see happen. I think during the course of the season, we're going to see that happen, and probably sooner rather than later, because that's essentially their first thing that they're going to want to do, is be appointing people at the top from the executive level down as to what is going to occur. And I did a video for somebody else recently, and I was having a lot of trouble with Jean-Claude Blanc, Jean-Claire Todibo, and getting it all mixed up. So I understand. But yeah, I think that those executive appointments are really the first step, frankly, in all of this, because otherwise you're not doing anything for the future, right? If these guys aren't going to be there in the future, then there's no point working with them right now. And so I think that's going to be some of the first changes that are made.
Yeah. Brian's got a question. Could we see Ralph Ragnick return to the club? No. Sorry, Brian.
I don't think that's possible.
I know you'd like it, Brian, but sorry, mate.
I liked Ralph myself. I thought he spoke a lot of sense, but yeah, I don't see that happening.
Anyways, any other questions? We'll try and get to them at the end for James, so you keep putting them in the chat. Let's move on to...
I know one question really quick is that, people are asking about this £245 million and all of that he's planning to invest.
Yeah.
I believe it has to do with the stadium expansion. The expansion of the seats. That's been their plan with the stadium. Their primary plan has been extending the stand to increase the seat capacity.
Is that the one over the train station that they've been...
Bobby Charlton's stand.
Logistically, they couldn't figure it out, could they? Because
I've heard that the prices of that was around about 500 to 600 million pound to just extend that.
In 2022, I pointed this out because it's sort of a funny thing, but in 2022, Keegan posted an article saying it was going to be about 200 to 250 million pounds to do it. All I know is that apparently that's kind of their intention. Their main intention is to do that with the stadium. That's what they want to do with it, and so it's apparently that this is the money that's going to go to something like that. That's what I've heard, and a few other people have heard, that it's going to the stadium, and that is the plan for the stadium. So I can only assume that's what it's for. Yeah. And some people say it's going to be a lot more expensive, and some people have definitely indicated that that would be about the cost. Maybe it is a little bit more, but bear in mind he may not be paying all of it himself.
Can we fix the leaks first?
I was just about to say, they sort the fucking urinals out there, fucking leaking urinals. The paninis that have no fucking cheese on them, it's just basically bread. And the connection that is just non-existent as well. Like, please sort them out first before you extend anything.
Can we just fix, the outside? Going to Old Trafford is so depressing. There's fucking nothing going on outside Old Trafford. Every time I go, it's just I get there 5 minutes before kickoff because there's nothing to do there.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But yeah, I suppose that'll come in the future, and we'll
step by step.
Yeah, step by step. Anyways, let's talk about people on the thumbnail. I've seen you hinting on Twitter at a couple of things going on with potential players who are not playing at the minute. Rafael Varane, who sort of he hasn't played the last 3-4 games. He came on yesterday because of Johnny Evans' injury, but didn't start again. But I think started the season really, really well. Mason Mount, who was Ten Hag's priority signing and was key to his whole thing, has basically dropped off the face of the earth and has not played other than a couple of substitute appearances here or there. Can you give us any reason why these guys are not playing? Has there been fallouts? Has there been something happening behind the scenes? What's going on with these two players?
Yeah, I mean, this situation with Rafael Varane, I know that that I don't know what, there's sort of a chicken and egg situation here. I think that the first thing was obviously being benched for the Manchester Derby was the first kind of a crack, certainly, because I mean, every player wants to play. At the same time, being benched for Johnny Evans is it's certainly going to lead to some confusion. Yeah, it's going to lead to some confusion and disagreement. Especially because, I understand, players are brought in and there's a plan described to them, for them, their position at the club, where they stand, all of that. Obviously, you always have to play into competition and things like that. But I don't think there was any understandable reason for Rafael Varane why he did not start in that game. And then the comment was made that it was tactical. And one of the things that there's been obvious disagreements on, and that I think is one of the things Ten Hag's been struggling with getting through to the team, is a large insistence, a really heavy insistence on certain profiles, to often the detriment, of the team, and without kind of factoring in the quality of the players. We've seen that with Anthony being really, really bad for quite a while, and one of the last players to get dropped, simply because he has a left foot. And it's profile has such a high weight over the ability of players that you start to wonder. I'm not taking Jadon Sancho's side on this, but that was sort of his point, is how bad does somebody have to perform in game every single week before we say, give it to somebody else. Somebody else is going to get a chance here. Is it really based on merit, or is it really based on profile? And there's no chance to actually work into the team no matter what you do. And that's a little bit of the degree of it. I don't think that Johnny Evans has earned a spot over Rafael Varane this season.
No.
I don't think that would be a thing to say. Harry, but it comes down to the fact that profile-wise prefers Maguire and Evans to Maguire and Varane. And so when he says tactical, it was kind of true, and it wasn't, but it's sort of like, well, if tactically I cannot start over Johnny Evans, this is ridiculous. Like, this is absurd. If Lisandro Martinez is there and Harry Maguire there and I'm competing and the best performer and the best player is going to play, then one has the ability to earn it on merit. But if it's not on merit, then it gets really tricky with the players in the locker room for something like that. So I think that's kind of the difficulty, and kind of, I don't think there's it's a huge issue beyond the simple fact of tactically they're not on the same page. Tactically, it's not understood by Varane why that's so important that he wouldn't be starting. And it's a hard sell for the manager to convince someone of that, that an emergency 1-year signing like Johnny Evans should be starting over you in some of the biggest games of the season.
I think there's no question Rafael Varane is a better centre-back, hands down, a million times, won World Cups, Champions League, etc. I think if I had a theory about this as to why, it's because of Varane's injury issues, and you need consistency in a team that has lacked consistency for the full season, and partnerships and chemistry, because it's been destroyed in every area of the pitch. I'm not agreeing with it before people come at me in the chat and say, what do you mean Evans over Maguire or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I would understand more than saying, we prefer him there, he does a better job there, etc. Maybe there's something in that. I'm not entirely sure. But
there was maybe a plan as well. Like, obviously, the rumours were Maguire was leaving most of the summer, and I think maybe Ten Hag was thinking he was going to get a different profile of centre back into the club, and obviously that didn't happen. Like, I know Todibo was mentioned, Pavard, etc. like that. Maybe he thought he was getting that, and obviously when that didn't happen, he's now had to do the emergency Johnny Evans signing and sort of make do with what he's got, because he was planning to replace Varane all along with the Maguire money.
Yeah.
Did you want to
multiple reasons.
Yeah, did you want to touch on the Mason Mount as well? Do you know anything on the Mason Mount situation?
Yeah, this one's a little more complicated in terms of what I can say. I don't think there's a major issue, but there's still a matter of, I think a lot of, a big part of this comes down to not knowing what to do at the moment and being a little bit chaotic. And then I think another part of it comes down to there's some disagreements within, in terms of how one manages themselves, fitness, things like that. United had a lot of fitness and injury issues, and players worry about their own health. A lot of players have their own advisement and things like that too. And there just happens to be some disagreements, as far as I've heard, within in regards to that. And it is all very complicated, and it's a tough situation, because it's not really a matter of trying to take side of the players or the manager or something, or have kind of like a war on it. It's just that one way or another, there's been a lot of breakdown in communication between manager, players, and the club in general. And this is kind of a symptom of that the plan is not getting to the players clearly in a way that's understandable, where they can all be on the same page. And it's just not quite working. And it's hard to kind of describe it and go beyond that without being right in there, and being involved in every conversation. But it's just not working, to where there's just constant issues with people, with players. And, in a lot of clubs, well, most modern clubs that have a lot more structure, there's a lot more support for these types of things. There's a lot more people involved in communicating to the players and people that they can bring their issues to, people that can kind of put it all together. We're continuing to struggle with the issue where the manager is supposed to be Sir Alex and is supposed to do everything and keep it all together. And Ten Hag is not that guy. He's just not. He doesn't have the charisma, the communication skills, and the personable nature in order to do that.
Any manager
the
has
human
that
understand it. Yeah, I don't know that anybody does. I mean, maybe Ancelotti is the closest thing to that in terms of, things, but I don't know. I honestly don't know. Yeah. There's so much blame to go around. It sort of doesn't really matter. At the end of it, it's just not working. And when people were talking about, oh, we got an injury crisis and that'll get better and then results will get better. Maybe, but there's so much wrong that I think other things will break while things are getting better, simply because it's not like it's going to just magically fix. There's a reason these things have happened, and those reasons are still there right now.
Open heart surgery, I think Ragnick alluded to. Yeah. There is a super chat from Big Dre, and thank you for that, saying Pep Guardiola and many other modern managers prefer profile to quality. Can't be mad at Ten Hag for being profile first because you all cry for philosophies and styles of play. I agree with that to a certain extent. But look, I kind of get both sides as well with a lot of the players. Like, why push him out that much and make him a priority signing and then just kind of not play him and no reasoning for it? I don't know. I'd love to pick Ten Hag's brain just for 20 minutes, just put him in a room, just like, please, can we have a talk about some stuff? Just sticking with individual players, and we mentioned a couple of them there. There's been a lot of links with Saudi, aren't there? The likes of Rafael Varane, Martial, you've seen Bruno in there, even Casemiro and these kind of guys. How much truth is in any of these at all with Sancho, Martial, etc.?
I mean, certainly Varane and Casemiro, I would expect to leave in the summer, frankly.
Oh, really?
This point. Yeah, I mean,
wow.
With Varane, it's basically like the way it's been described is that he could stay if there's a managerial change, but otherwise he's probably going to go. And it's not necessarily just a personal thing. I'm not saying that's just about a personal fallout, but just they're going to sign a new right center back.
It's not his signing, is it? It's not Ten Hag signing.
No. And they're going to sign a new right center back, and it's probably going to be Todibo. And at this point, it looks more like Maguire makes sense as a backup. His ball progression is a lot better, frankly, as well. And so anyway, I think there's that. I think, and I think that, Varane will want to go somewhere he can still play first. And I don't necessarily think it has to be Saudi. He's got interest elsewhere too. But Casemiro, I know, is wanted by Saudi, and I think there's a good chance he'll go there.
Do you think it's a mistake, the Casemiro? Do you think Ten Hag thinks of Casemiro signing as a mistake? Do you think he's bought him and then gone, this is not the guy?
Surely not. I don't know. I mean, about that. The first season, he was unbelievable.
To some degree. Look, the thing about it is, I don't know, it's hard for people to admit mistakes or errors or things like that, but here's kind of the issue, right? This is the problem I've had all along, and I think really the downfall underneath all of this. The bringing on of Ten Hag as a coach was sold under the prospect of doing a real, full, top-to-bottom reboot of the club, instituting a style, instituting a way of playing, really moving towards this modern thing. The recruitment hasn't matched that in the slightest in terms of how it's done in profiles. Casemiro is a great player. He was one of my favorites at Madrid for a long time. One of the best defensive midfielders, I think, ever in terms of his ability and what he's accomplished. Still the wrong person to buy for this project, because you immediately start to push for, we need results now. And that's part of the problem you have with Varane and Casemiro at the moment. You need results now. They're not happy with the situation because we're not ready to get results now. We're not ready to win titles now. And they're the wrong players in that respect. Even taking profile and fit aside and things like that. I think Casemiro's an intelligent player, but he's in his decline a little bit. And it's a lot of money and a lot of wages, and you put a lot of excess pressure on it. And that's the same issue with overpaying for Antony. You do not pay 100 million for a player like Anthony when you're doing a rebuild. It makes no sense, and it's been very kind of devastating to the balance of things, to where we kind of had to go into results mode for a while last year that didn't really match the way that we were wanting to implement as a play style, because it was so kind of desperate. And now we're kind of practically like, it's, if what was happening this season was happening in the first season, it would be a little more understandable. We're trying to implement a totally new style. It's the first season of a coach. We're struggling because it's a big shift, but it's the second season, and it's like we're starting over. And that's been a big problem, I think, with the recruitment, decisions that have been made with regards to Casemiro. Frankly, I'm not going to lie, it was even why I was slightly concerned about the De Jong chase, aside from the mess that went into all of that. Why do we need this one specific player who's going to cost a lot of money and be a lot of wages if we're rebuilding for a 4, 5, 6 year project? It forces you to get results now, and it changes the goal and the outcome and what you think about where you're going.
Do you not think De Jong fits that philosophy and the age profile?
No, I mean, he does, but he doesn't financially. And as a manager, you're always going to be under pressure financially. You look at Arsenal, right? Before this summer, a lot of smart signings in that respect. Young, lower wage players and purchases. And they built up to near a title challenge last year. And now you can top it off by spending your money on Declan Rice, on spending, I think they've made mistakes, frankly, because I think Kai Havertz is a terrible purchase. But you can spend your money on players like that now. You can spend big money because now you are in win now mode. Now it's time to do it. And now if they don't win and they start failing and they don't improve upon what they're doing, the pressure will be on the manager and the pressure will be on the club because they're not living up to what they should be. And that's what I'm looking at with it, is that, as soon as you start spending that money and buying players of these profiles of this cost, you are in win now mode. You cannot buy De Jong for 75 million, 400,000 a week, which was the wage package he agreed to get out of Barcelona. Well, not he agreed, but the wage package being offered. And then say, we're not going to win anything for a few years.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You got to buy those finished articles when you're ready for those finished articles. You buy those players when they're ready to come in. It was the same issue with Paul Pogba, right? Paul Pogba is a player you buy when you're ready, not a player you buy when you're trying to rebuild the whole club. And that's a big reason why it fell apart.
Does Sancho fit that profile as well? Is he in that camp of when you've built your team and you're ready to start adding those talents that can change games and could come into an already functioning system? Is that why Sancho's failed?
Probably.
Because he's come into a system that doesn't work and it's not functioning. We don't know what our thing is, and he's kind of just this outlier on the outside. And his behavior and mentality might not be there, but like if you had a team that was like a well-oiled machine, I think if Sancho went back to City, I think he absolutely tears the league up because he goes into a system that works and it functions. And I think he's come into a dysfunctional system.
I totally agree with you there. And I do think it's the issue. It's a lot of money, high wages. You bring a player like that in and you have to look at it and say, he's young. And so you could get away with it a little bit because he's very young. I mean, what, 20 years old, 21 years old when we bought him? Still, like, an incredible talent. So you can understand wanting to bring him in. But we had no plan. We had no plan. We had no way to use him. We had nothing to do with him.
All right.
And, and that is definitely, I think a factor in that. And it's a factor in a lot of the transfers we've done. I mean, we brought Ronaldo in, again, in the worst possible situation. That team was not ready to take the next step with Ronaldo that first season, under Ole, and it totally fell apart. I mean, immediately fell apart because there was instant pressure to get results, and they were not ready to take that next step tactically and across the board.
Sorry about that. I just had some pop in there. I was like, fuck off. Anyway, it's fucking ruined me had that. Should we dive into some questions, Sam?
Yeah, I had one that before I go through. I wanted to ask as well. Like you've mentioned there with the structure of the signings and stuff like that. Do you think there's a lot of pressure on the club from an optics point of view. Like, say the club went out and they signed like a £25 million player, £30 million player, £40 million player, and didn't buy the superstar signing, didn't buy the money maker. Do you think there's pressure on the upper sort of management of the club, the people who are basically not football people, to go, we need to buy a superstar signing to remain relevant, to get these social engagement, to sell shirts, blah, blah. Do you think that's part of the problem as well? That's why we're not investing smartly? And do you think there's pressure on the fans because the fans demand... Like, I don't give a shit. I like whether we spend £20 million on a player, 10 million, if he works for the team and he's effective, I don't give a shit. But do you think there's that pressure on the club as well?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems you have under the Glazers and in general right now is the club care way too much what fans think. And that sounds bad because, you know, there's things they should care what the fans think. And it's funny that they have it flipped. They care way too much what the fans think about football decisions and way too little what they think about everything else that actually does affect the fans. Yeah. And the truth of the matter is, no matter what you do, football-wise, the only praise you're going to get at the end of the day is for winning. And no matter what you do, if you are not winning, you will get criticism. No matter who you buy, no matter what names come in, no matter how exciting that all is, you will get criticism if you do not win. And it has to be a football-first focused, a success-focused, mindset from top to bottom, and that's it. No fan opinion should matter in the slightest when it comes to the football itself, because they're not the people who make the decisions. I could think all day, what is the right thing to do from watching? Who's the right person? Who's the right player? How should we do this? How should we do that? That shouldn't matter to anybody, and it shouldn't affect anything, that is going on. And on the other side, they should care about what fans think about the stadium, about the grounds, about the food, about the Wi-Fi, about everything that goes into the actual match day experience, because and the TV experience and through the week and what's on MUTV. These are the things they should care about, and they don't. And so it's the priorities are very flipped at United, and that does constitute the problem. If we'd been making smart and the funny part about it all is more of, when you look at football transfers in general, the top end of football transfers in terms of cost have an extremely high failure rate. When you look at the biggest purchases, Griezmann going to Barcelona in the first place, Jadon Sancho,
Dembele.
Obviously, Coutinho, Dembele, João Felix to Atletico. Like, these are Hazard to Madrid. These are not the vast majority of these transfers have not worked out. We have our own Pogba. How it's gone. We have plenty of our own. At the top end, you have a high failure rate. City have done really well purchasing, in many instances, slightly less, exciting names in that 40 to 50 million pound bracket, and finding the gems. Look at Doku. They bring him in. Ridiculous. He comes in insane. One of just an absurd performance right off of the bat. You know what I mean? And it's not a sexy name, but he comes in and does it. And that has been the difference. But that's proper recruitment. It's not the name, it's the profile, it's the age. And we've had on offer a lot of names that would have made a big difference. In 2020, we could have brought in Kulusevski, Bentancur, players, Declan Rice. Those players were all on offer to us at that point in time. Chiesa before his injury. These were players that were there and are hanging around that we did not get done in lieu of chasing a Jadon Sancho. And then you top it off with almost a guarantee. I think Erling Haaland was as close to a guaranteed success as you get in football, because physically he's insane. You cannot match it, what he does. And so it worked for City to do that on top. But that's definitely a factor in all of this as well.
You did a scouting video, didn't you, Nick? Of I think one of the first videos we ever did on this channel was a scouting video of Julian Alvarez, because Ralph Ragnick mentioned him, and the guy was class, and he was available 15 million, I believe.
Yeah.
and he goes to City, and now he's just absolutely destroying teams every fucking week. It's
Well,
just...
hopefully, Sir Jim and Ineos and Jean-Claude Van Damme, whatever his second name is, along with others, can address these issues, but time will tell. I'm going to read out a few quick-fire questions, and we'll let you go, James. Reese Holland saying, top 3 signings you want made with Ineos now involved?
That's a good question. I would say certainly, I think Todibo is a fantastic, potentially one of the best center backs in the world and moving forward in the future. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. In the future,
Wow.
in the future, I think he's on his way there. I mean, when you look at Nice are doing right now, he's had
Top of the
games
league, aren't they?
where he's completing, and he's having games where he's completing 110 passes like it's nothing. You know, the amount of involvement. He's I think one of the perfect modern center backs, and he's absolutely rapid too. So I think he has the tools to do it all. Honestly, other than that, I just don't know. I really have no clue. You know, like I can look at targets that are being mentioned and named and things like that. You know, I think Declan Rice would have been the perfect midfielder for us, but that's not going to happen now. You know, there was a player I've mentioned before, Ezekiel Palacios, that United have been looking at. Looks like a good player, but it's hard to say because at this point in time, my preference is, like, the way that I view it now is if they put the right people in place, I could not give a damn about who they pick and who they hire, who they sell, who they fire, who they bring in. Could not care. If the right people are in place, it's like whoever they want, I'll get excited about that person. Let them do what they're gonna do, and that's it. And I'll once they say, hey, we want this player, I'll get excited about that, and I'll hype them up and go crazy and be, make all the stupid comments I can. But once they've decided, but until then, I have no idea.
Should we just go to the Brighton recruitment structure and just be like, how much money do you want? Just come to our club. We will pay you whatever.
There you go, mate.
We'll double your wage. Just come to our club and find these gems you can find in every single season. Like
we'd ruin them as well. Anyone who comes to United, we seem to ruin. So
I think we need a little bit more because the pressure is there. Like you need, like in a lot of cases, a slightly tier higher or a player one step further in their progression at United, because there is a pressure to perform. You don't have the years that Brighton have. We cannot float in 15th for a couple years or something like that while these players develop. But that doesn't mean you can't get it done.
Yeah, makes sense. Anonymous Mango says, question for James. Is Onana from Everton not a possible target to replace Casemiro anymore? You seem to have shifted to I can't pronounce that name, Palacios in recent videos when talking about midfield targets.
No, I think Onana certainly is. He's one of the other main names, and I think he's shifted more into the deepest midfielder for Everton this season. And I think he's an exceptional name. I think that he's probably not the only name of his profile out there, and that one of the hopes is that with the right team in place, they'll be able to identify him. Where you could get a similar player that's not 80 million from Everton, but maybe 40 million from somewhere in League One. You know what I mean? And I think that that's the type of signings we've been missing. But I think he's a good player.
Onana. Huge fan of him myself. I think unless you had anything else, Sam, I think we can leave it at that. Where will we find you this week, James? I imagine you're going to be busy with everything that's going on with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, etc. The podcast.
Yeah. I mean, Thursday today, I probably won't make anything else before next week, and by then we might. We'll see. We might have something interesting going on by then. So that's the hope anyway. That by then we can finally put to bed the discussion of will it or won't it happen, and just talk about what happens next.
I wonder what these Qatari accounts are going to do now. I wonder what their plan is now.
That'll be there forever, mate. They'll still be doing it 10 years time.
They'll find some other grift. It's all right.
They'll find something. Quick score prediction for Saturday, James. Luton at home. What do you think?
I think it's going to be a tight one. I think they were pretty tough to break down for Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm going to the game, so I fucking hope not. Yeah.
But 2-1. If we can start that same front three, since Rashford won't be banned for this game, I think we'll win. I think we will win.
That.
I think we've got enough. Yeah.
Good news,
positivity.
By the way. Liverpool have been beaten by Toulouse 3-2.
Lovely.
So, good news.
That.
Nice good news.
Yeah. big thank you to everyone tuning in, getting your comments and your questions. Really appreciate it. Do leave a like on the video for us if you can, and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you're from this community, make sure you go check James out on his podcast, on the YouTube, on socials, etc., all that good stuff. And as always, a big thank you to you, James. We appreciate you taking time, mate, and it's always insightful and always fun as well.
Anytime, of course.
Absolutely. And Sam, nice one, mate.
Yeah,
Cheers.
Yeah, I'll just sit in the corner and be quiet, shall I?
Yeah, man. See you in a bit. Take care.
Bye.